So, greetings, amazing leaders and students of this country who want to take a step forward. I just have a few questions for you. Firstly, have you found out what you're passionate about? And what social inequities do you find so repulsive that it stirs you into action and makes you want to rally on the streets? It may be about women's rights, it may be about marriage equality, or even the legalization of marijuana. But regardless of the issue that you want to advocate, it is important for you to have a leadership approach that is meant to address the complexity and the complicated nature of the issue. And I would love to share one approach that I learned from the Asian Institute of Management that helped my social enterprise, Kandama, to take that step forward. And that is the Bridging Leadership Framework. So the end game of the Bridging Leadership Framework is to achieve social equity, which you can see at the rightmost part of the framework. But conversely, the framework starts with ownership of a particular issue. So what this means is that one recognizes the equity and the system of stakeholders which cause it, and the person decides that he wants to do something about that particular issue. So this is the phase where you ask yourselves, whether or not you strongly feel about a particular issue and whether we want to do something about it. But more importantly, this is also the phase where we uncover why we want to act on a certain issue. So in my case, the issue that I own is the empowerment of Indigenous women. And you might ask me why. And I think that ownership of an issue is a very personal journey. And that journey for me started in 2015 or even earlier than 2015. I remember the time when I was in law school for 4 years, roughly 4 years. And in my last year in law school, I got really depressed. And I went to law school because I wanted to help move society forward. And since being a lawyer is highly romanticized in Philippine society, wherein majority of Philippine presidents and senators were lawyers, that was the only way that I know as a child back then on how to make a social impact, at least at the time. But I felt like a fish out of water, and it's because I have not found the purpose of my leadership work in law school just yet. And to find one's purpose, the leader must first understand themselves and their passions. And this is the why behind ownership of an issue. Without a real sense of purpose, leaders are at the mercy of their egos and their vulnerabilities. And the implication of this concept is that leadership development must also be about trying to align the purpose of the leader with the work that he's doing. So this is about finding one's ikigai. And I'm sure like some of you are familiar with what ikigai is, wherein you align your passion, your mission, your vocation, as well as your profession. And when I got depressed in law school, I went online to search for my ikigai, just like a lot of millennials out there who are in an existential crisis. Then I saw a YouTube video of a person who was doing all the things that makes him happy, from scuba diving to skydiving to traveling all over the world and meeting new people. I realized that I wanted that for myself. And I realized that the reason that he was doing that was because he has terminal cancer and he's dead right now. And at that point, I asked myself, if I only have 2 years to live, would I be doing what I'm doing right now? And I said, no, I'm too fabulous for law school. I don't want to spend my life memorizing dry provisions of the law that do not excite me. I can memorize the past winners of Miss Universe, but not the family code. So I Googled, what is the meaning of life? And that search led me to an open call for a social enterprise idea by the Singapore International Foundation for their Young Social Entrepreneurs Program in partnership with Mackenzie Institute. So this was the time that I started asking myself, what am I really passionate about? What sparks joy? What is it that resonates with me? And I had three realizations after that. Firstly, I realized that I wanted to have something to do with design, fashion, and the arts. But I've been trying to veer away from it because it's too gay and I was so scared of being judged. Then I realized that if I only have 2 years to live, I wouldn't care what other people think of me. So owning an issue means confronting the voices of fear that we hear as if our days are numbered in order to find that courage to actually own a particular issue. So the second realization that I had is that what I want to do has something to do about the weaving industry in my province, Ifugao, because I have indigenous heritage and because handloom weaving is a very important tradition in my province. And I remembered my trip to Banawe, Ifugao, wherein the locals were selling bags that were made from Thailand, but they're embroidered with the word Banawe just to make it seem like it was locally made. And I realized that that's going to kill the weaving industry. And it gave me such a sense of displeasure that I realized that I wanted to do something about what's happening. And my third realization is that I wanted to draw an inspiration from my college thesis. So I failed, like thesis in college twice. So this really made a very indelible mark on me. And you don't necessarily have to fail anything to just really remember that. But I couldn't forget what my thesis was about. And it was about the impact of women empowerment and community development. And in fact, in some instances, it was reported that it had the highest return of investment in terms of developing a certain community. So these realizations made me believe in what Steve Jobs said, that you only connect the dots when you look backwards. And now everything is starting to make sense. So my social enterprise idea was incubated under the Young Social Entrepreneurs Program, and Kandama Social Enterprise was born out of these three realizations, among many other. So in the screen, Rappler captured my shift in direction, where in 2014, I won all of the law debate tournaments that I joined in, and they wrote about one of them. And in 2018, they featured my work as a social entrepreneur. Now, this is the theory of change that we actually made, wherein it captures the action that we wanted to do, as well as the intended results that we have in mind. So ownership means studying the components of the issue that you wanted to address, as well as knowing the stakeholders that are involved and knowing if you can influence these particular stakeholders. So I left law school without telling my parents about it because I know that they're going to disagree. But I know in my heart that I was at the cusp of something that is special to me. So we made it to the finals of the Young Social Entrepreneurs Program in 2016. Then I officially launched the enterprise in 2017. Then just a year after, we were considered as one of the 100 social enterprises in Asia to watch out for in 2018. And that was also the time that I did my first international fashion show that year in Melbourne. And the year after, I got invited to the Paris Fashion Week and New York Fashion Week. So there was a lot of flow in what I was doing. And this was also the time when I started having celebrity clients and when I dressed beauty queens, the time when I got published in fashion magazines, and when my name was mentioned in a Spanish fashion magazine with Kendall Jenner on the same page. So I know that I was onto something. And at this point, it's clear to me what my personal vision and mission is. But I really want to have great impact in addressing a complex and complicated problem. And I know that I should not get stuck in the ownership phase because there's only so much that I can possibly do alone. What I need is a multi-stakeholder approach to address the social inequities. So the second stage of the Bridging Leadership Framework is about co-ownership, wherein once the bridging leader commits to a response to the issue faced, he brings together the different stakeholders of the issue into collaboration towards addressing the issue. So for example, if you care about slowing down the spread of COVID, taking individual precautions will help, but acting alone will only do so much. So if the COVID issue matters to me, then I have to own that issue by doing something about it. Like, for example, wearing a mask and by telling others to do so. But that issue has to be co-owned by other stakeholders too. To be effective, we need a multi-stakeholder response where everyone is open to collaborating to address the issue, from the LGU to the national governments to the citizenry. So this phase was actually quite challenging for me because I have a tendency to have this hero mentality where I feel like I'm Superman, I can do everything. I thought that I can single-handedly bring about poverty reduction, but poverty reduction is a complex issue that no single person can solve. So promoting the weaves globally is already a gargantuan task, and addressing poverty is even way harder than that. And since preparing for the shows overseas takes a lot of time, I also made a very deliberate attempt to withdraw from community organizing. So I delegated more community organizing functions to my auntie, who is part of my social enterprise as well. But in 2016, when we were starting out, we had 10 weavers who joined the weaving association we organized, and this number fortunately grew to a membership of 29 weavers in 2017. A year after, however, 7 of our weavers left, and the weaving associations that we started um, experience a high turnover rate. So what's the reason for the decline? So we had 20% average fallout rate annually, and that's a great cause for concern for all of us. And I realized that the high turnover rate is caused by the lack of empathy in our programs because it was very top down and the organizational structure was vertical and hierarchical. And what made things worse was my detachment from community organizing in order to expand the market of Kandama overseas. And I've uncovered that the pervasive belief system within the social enterprise is that the community is merely a passive recipient of assistance and not active agents of change, since I consider them as non-paying customers of Kandama instead of strategic partners. So what this means is that the people whom I intend to help are not co-owners of the issue. And I was also completely surprised to uncover this, largely because I wasn't aware that this is how I viewed the weavers. When I was starting out with the social enterprise, I was very idealistic. I do not think that I had this belief system. So it's rather surprising that I have developed this belief system over time, and worse, that it reverberated across the entire organization. So the problem with owning the entire issue is that it becomes very overwhelming. So no wonder I was very overwhelmed. It's because I was acting like a hero trying to solve the community's poverty problem by giving the people jobs, but by not giving the work back to the people, which means that they're not co owning the issue. Therefore, after the ownership phase, new relationships among stakeholders should emerge. My existing mental model must die, and it should be replaced by a belief system that views weavers not as passive recipients of aid, but as active agents of change, not as non paying customers, but as development partners. Moreover, the weavers as active agents, as well as our customers who wear our weaves, should co-own the vision of an empowered indigenous community and assume greater responsibility in a process that gives the work back to the people and assume greater responsibility um, in other sense. So other stakeholders such as the local government unit as well as national agencies must be engaged in the process as well. And once these new relationships have emerged through the crystallization of intention of the collective, it must then be institutionalized in a process of co-creating, a co-shaping, wherein the system embodies and institutionalizes the new, evolving the larger ecosystem. This is a situation wherein you've addressed some social inequities already. And this is the last phase of the bridging leadership framework, or the co-creation. It is where the collaborative agreements are operationalized into collective action. And what this means is that whatever agreement that you came up with during the ownership phase are now translated into actions that are new institutional agreements or arrangements. And these programs should eventually reduce the original inequity that's being faced. So what this means is that whatever you've agreed upon prior to the co-creation phase must be prototyped into something that's concrete and constantly iterated, validated, as well as tested. But doing these things are not easy, from ownership to co-creation, because leadership has to take place every single day. And I cannot be, it cannot be the responsibility of a few. It's not a rare event or a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I always ask myself, can I do it? Can I lead every day? Can I co-create? And can I help in the renewal of our civilization? In all honesty, I'm not sure. But one can lead with no more than one question in hand. Just like you and me and everybody else, if you have a question in mind, you can start leading. So go ahead and take the step forward by owning and co-owning an issue and by co-creating with other stakeholders. So thank you so much and good luck in taking that step forward.